Imagine going home and finding flashing lights, cops, and yellow tape stretched everywhere. Then you hear the searing words that will shatter your world forever. Your mother, younger sisters, and stepfather have been murdered. Everyone you love no longer exists. This nightmare happened to my next guest at the age of 9 years old. Today we investigate the quadruple murder in Jesse's family. What really happened, and why was she spared? April 30th, 1989, Lakeville, Indiana. The bodies of Reverend Robert L. Pelly, his wife, and two of their children are found in their home, shot dead. At close range. There are no signs of forced entry, no witnesses, no murder weapon found. 3 Pelly children were out that night. 17-year-old Jeff at prom, Jackie, 14, at church camp, and Jessica, 9, at a sleepover. Jessica arrived the next morning to a crime scene.
There were cop cars everywhere. My friend's mom told me my family was murdered.
No immediate arrests are made.
They were all gone, and here I was, alone.
The Pelly murder case goes cold.
I would spend the next 29 years fighting, crawling, and clawing my way out of the darkness.
Joining us now is Jesse. You say many people don't even realize you exist. They didn't know you were even around back then. Why? How could that be?
Well, my whole immediate family was gone, and I just felt alone, and everybody forgot that I was even there. Like, once my family was gone, it was like I was gone.
So your mom you lost your biological father.
Yep.
She remarried a minister, Reverend Bob Pelly.
Yep.
When you were about 6 years old.
Yes.
So describe the blended family that you had.
Well, there was Bob and his 2 children. They were teenagers. And then there was my mom, me, and my 2 little sisters. So, you put 5 kids in a house, a new parent, and, we'd all just lost one of our other parents, so it was a tough thing.
What kind of relationship did you have with your new family, your step family?
I really didn't have a relationship with them. I was angry that my dad wasn't there anymore, and they were trying to give me a new one, and I didn't want that. So it was tough, and we really didn't get to that point of being comfortable with each other.
Could you describe to me your stepbrother, Jeff? What was he like?
Well, he, was not the nicest person to me. So that was a little difficult. He was very angry too, most of the time. He would just do stuff to me that, was not normal, or I don't know if he thought it was funny, but from my perspective, it wasn't. It was terrifying. He pretended to roll a hairdryer in the tub with me while I was in there, and...
I'm sorry, you threw a hairdryer in the tub?
It wasn't plugged in or anything, but I don't know if he thought it was funny, but, it terrified me.
Yeah, so getting electrocuted is terrifying at any age, especially if you're a young child.
Yeah, so it was just stuff like that where it just didn't seem normal, So I was scared a lot. Never wanted my mom and my stepdad to leave the house, and so it just kind of went from there.
And your stepdad, what kind of a person was he?
He was an authoritarian. He believed in spankings and, being tough on kids, which my mom was not like that. It was different. In church we had to sit there, and if we talked, we got in trouble when we got home. He used the belt for a while and then had a little paddle after that. So, he just thought that we had to behave, and this is the way that he was going to make it happen.
So the new family has a pretty strict father.
Yep.
And a brother that you don't like, and
yep.
We don't know how he felt about you.
Right.
So let's go back to the last day that Jessie saw her mom, sisters, and stepdad alive. Now, they stayed behind, right, because it was just another Saturday night, but Jessie went over to a sleepover at a friend's house.
Yes.
Jessie's stepbrother, Jeff, was headed to prom, and as you saw in that little tape, Jessie's stepsister was at church camp, so the 3 of them, you guys were out of the house.
Yes.
So when you headed over to the sleepover, do you have any last recollections about what you said to your mom, to the rest of the family?
Yeah, I went into the bathroom where my mom was in her room, and I said, okay, well, my sister and I are leaving, and she's like, well, she's not going. And I was like, yeah, she is. And so, I tried to argue with her, and she just gave me that look like, no, it's not happening. So then I, stopped talking and was like, okay, fine. And then went to the sleepover.
So if you'd won that argument, your sister would be alive today.
Yes, she would. So that's a tough thing to think about sometimes. If I had just fought harder to have her go instead of giving in to the look.
I don't think that's your fault.
Right.
There are not a lot of 9-year-olds who get past the look.
Right.
So you return on Sunday morning, you pull up. Describe the scene. Again, this is a 9-year-old version of you just trying to process yellow tape and everything else.
Yeah, we pulled in and there was a bunch of people out in the parking lot, cops, church people. There was yellow crime scene tape around the house. I thought my dog had died. In a 9-year-old mind, you don't think of anything worse. So I was like, okay, what had happened? And then that's when a police officer came to my friend's mom's window and had her step out of the vehicle. And I saw that she had been crying, and she came to my door and opened it and just told me that my family was gone. So I just didn't really know how to process that at 9. So I just cried and cried for days.
Did you stay with that friend's mom for a while?
About 3 days, yeah.
And then what happened?
And then I went to live with my grandfather for a little bit.
And how'd you guys process it together as a family? This is your mother's side.
Yeah, this is my mother's side. We didn't really talk about it. It was like a hush-hush subject. They thought it was best for me if I just moved on and didn't really talk about it. So to talk about my family was just really not a thing.
Oh my goodness.
So. Yeah.
And what happened to your step siblings? Your Jeff, who I know you didn't like much, but was still your stepbrother, and you had a stepsister, Jackie. What happened to them?
I do believe they went with family. I don't know exactly who.
On the father's side?
Yes, on their dad's side.
But you were all at the funeral together?
Yes.
What were they like at the funeral?
My mind kind of blocked out a lot of it. I remember the caskets. I don't really remember a whole lot about the people around me. I was just, I think in a state of shock because of everything that had just happened.
Were they as sad as you were?
Jackie, yes, she was. Jeff, I don't remember him crying at all. So.
Up next, the murder of Jesse's 4 family members went unsolved for 13 years. Then, a twist in the case that turns Jesse's world upside down again. Stay with us.
I was the first person that Jessie had ever told her story to. Every time I thought I found the bottom layer of trauma, there was always more.
I'll never be able to escape it.
Jessie was only 9 years old, and this trauma would linger over her for the rest of her life.
We are back with Jessie, whose mother, 2 sisters, and stepfather were murdered in their own home when she was just 9 years of age. Her cousin, Jamie, who just heard, joins us now. So, Jessie, after the funeral, you go back with your mom's family. How did you begin the process over the next few years of your life?
Well, it was tough because I was lost and nobody was there to help me. I couldn't talk about my family. They didn't want to talk about my family, so I was cut off from everybody dealing with my family and what had happened. So I literally was completely alone. So I didn't have a chance to deal with it when I was younger.
So what kinds of things would you do? If you can't talk it out, you'll do it out sometimes.
Yeah, I ended up cutting when I was younger.
Cutting yourself?
Yep. The pain was so great inside that I had to find a way to release it. It's not the best thing to do, but it did help at the time,
Just because you actually have pain that...
Yeah, to take the focus off the internal pain.
And what did the people who love you do when they found out you were cutting yourself?
I mean, they were angry that I was doing it, and, they took my door off the room so they could keep an eye on me. And not that anybody could have helped me at that point, because they didn't know how. I was a lot to take on, just because I didn't know how to deal with it, and nobody was helping me, or could help me. at that time. So,
And all the while, when you're going through this very difficult adolescence, you have no idea who killed your mom, your sisters, your stepfather. It was for 13 years. What was that like?
well, I thought in my own head, tried to come up with what could have happened. So I thought it was my stepdad that at that time.
How so?
Because he spanked me, was not very nice. You know, to a small child, you would think he could be capable of something like that.
Oh, that he killed your mom and sisters,
Yes.
then killed himself.
Yes, that's what I thought had happened.
Now, Jamie, you say early on members of your family and your cousins, so
Yeah.
you were living together, this experience, they had concerns about not your stepfather, but your stepbrother, Jeff.
I know that he and Dawn had issues, Jesse's mom. There was a lot of resentment, I think, there. He had just lost his mom to cancer before they had remarried and formed this new blended family. And so I think it was just as hard for Jeff as it was for Jesse. As the oldest children, you kind of bear the scars of the loss that you had before, where maybe the younger ones could move on better and move forward without harboring the anger that the other two, I think, seemed.
Did your family think maybe Jeff could have done something as heinous as killing the whole family?
I was 12 years old at the time that this happened, and Jesse was 9. And our family was told early on that the detectives suspected that Jeff was the one who had done it.
Oh, they did?
They did. And to put it in perspective, you have to realize this was back in 1989. So this was back before all the violence we see in society today. And so this would have been an incredibly shocking, emotionally daunting thing to happen. But then to also learn that it could be someone that not only knew the family, but actually lived with the family was shocking, yes.
Jesse, can I tease into a little bit of the relationship between your stepfather and your stepbrother?
Yeah, they did not get along the best just because Jeff was always in trouble, doing something, getting into fights, sneaking out, drinking. So the relationship, at least from my perspective, was not the greatest.
Walk me through what happened the days up to this murder. There was a fight about the prom.
Yeah, this was about a month before, and he had wrecked his truck.
Jeff had.
Yes. Got caught drinking, stuff like that. So his dad told him that he couldn't go to prom. That was the punishment for all of the stuff he was doing.
I'm sure they fought about that. That's pretty harsh.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So when you went off to that sleepover that night, Jeff still got to go to the prom. How was that?
His dad was going to take him. He was not allowed to drive the car.
All right. So the case eventually went cold. But 13 years later, the police charged Jesse's stepbrother, Jeff Pelly, with the quadruple murder of their family. Why all these years later, Jamie? If at the time of the murders, for the first time now I'm hearing that there was actually suspicion about him. What took so long?
There was, and I think that they had a lot of evidence, and it was circumstantial evidence, and they really wanted the murder weapon, which they didn't have. And so I think that's the reason the case went cold. And this was the type of thing, like I said earlier, it was just such a horrific thing to happen to a family, especially, a pastor and his wife and a 6- and 8-year-old girl, that I think it haunted the people. It definitely haunted the community. It haunted the detectives, I think. It haunted anyone who heard about this, because in 1989, this was not something that you heard about.
You almost don't want it to be true. You're
No.
hoping against it. So how did you react to these charges, Jesse?
Once I realized it wasn't my stepdad, they told me that there was no way it could have been him. Then I automatically thought of Jeff, just because of how he was when he was younger. The violence, he was always in fights, the way he treated me.
You were scared of him?
Oh yeah. Yep. I did go visit him when I was 15 though, but luckily at that time I thought it was his dad that did it.
So at the trial of your stepbrother, Jeff, you actually testified.
Yes, I did.
And when you take a stand and testify against somebody, it can be really painful.
Yes, it was.
What did you say and why did you believe it?
Because they were saying that there was no gun for him to use. And my mom and stepdad had a gun rack on the wall in their bedroom. And before I left for the sleepover, the gun was there and the bow and arrow was there. The bow was there. So I do remember that, because they were trying to paint that there was no gun.
So you knew there was a gun?
Yes.
From your own eyes, you knew that?
Yes.
You thought he was capable of doing it?
Oh, yeah.
So Jeff Pelly was convicted on 4 counts of murder in 2006, sentenced for 160 years. That's 40 years for each murder. But in the years since Jeff's conviction, there have been many lingering questions about the quadruple murder. So up next, is the wrong man in jail? What really happened that night that Jesse's family was murdered? We are back with the true crime survival story of Jesse Pelly, whose 4 family members were murdered. 13 years later, Jesse's stepbrother, Jeff Pelly, was charged and convicted of killing them. Have you heard from your stepbrother since he's been in jail?
No, I have not. Not at all.
Any desire to talk to him?
Not really. I said all I had to say at the trial. So
let me open up another wound. Your stepsister, Jackie, does not believe her brother was guilty.
right,
There have been other folks who have been lobbying on his behalf, trying to clear his name.
right.
What do you think about those efforts?
I mean, I understand that that's her brother. And, as a sibling, you're probably going to do all you can do, even if they did it. So, but I know he did it. So, I guess she's being supportive for him, and that's what she has to do.
So let me share with the audience some other facts, arguments people are being exposed to now. Jesse's stepbrother, Jeff, who was convicted, had no DNA linking him to the crime. There was no weapon ever found, leaving many people to question, did Jeff really kill his father, his stepmother, and his young stepsisters? Now, Jeff's case has gone through appeals, and even the Innocence Project team in Indiana has taken this case on. I'll be right back. I'm going to bring in Heather Hansen from Law and Crime Network, an expert in these kinds of issues. The case was cold for 13 years. Why did prosecutors say, all right, we're going to open it up now and begin going after Jeff? What was the motive?
Well, they say the motive is exactly what Jesse just pointed out, this idea that Jeff was so mad at his stepfather that he wasn't going to be able to drive his car to the prom, that drove him to murder. The thing is, in most cases, motive doesn't matter. In this case, it was motive and opportunity, maybe, that the prosecutors rested their entire case on, Dr. Oz.
This is a timeline. Do you do this as you're going through cases often? Do it for all of us. These are the questions that folks have. So the timeline starts at 5 o'clock on Friday. This is the night of the prom, right? And people argue there wasn't enough time for him to have done what prosecutors say he did.
Yeah, I mean, he would have had to been moving very quickly. At 5 o'clock, church members were at the home. So we know at 5 o'clock they were live.
So that's the church.
Yes.
That's home. So at 5 o'clock, we know where he is. He's at home with the family.
Exactly right. Sometime between 5 and 5:20, which is the next spot in the timeline that we'll get to, Jeff would have had to kill his father upstairs, go downstairs and kill his stepmother and his stepsisters, find and clean up all of the casings from the bullets, get rid of the weapons, shower, change his clothes, leave the house, lock up, get in the car, and drive to a payphone to call his girlfriend at 5:20. That's 20 minutes, Dr. Oz.
Yeah. It's tough. And one more point in the timeline, if we can fast forward. The next morning, at 10 a.m.,
10 a.m. is when they'd find the bodies. So between 5:20, when Jeff made that phone call, and 10 a.m., we don't know what was happening at the home. And there's some evidence that maybe other things were going on.
So let's walk forward here. There's a lack of physical evidence, which is concerning. It should be.
Yeah, absolutely. In most cases, we have some physical evidence. Here, we don't have the guns. They were never found. The police never looked for fingerprints because, as Jesse pointed out, they always suspected that maybe it was Jeff. More interesting, though, are little things, like there were wet washcloths found at the house at 10 a.m. Why would they be wet if no one was in the house since 5:20 the night before? And most interesting to me is the fact that the father would have popcorn as his nighttime snack. Popcorn was found in his stomach, and the deaths were apparently, allegedly, before 5:20.
Yeah, this doesn't make any sense. The doctor doesn't make sense.
Well, I wouldn't think so. I mean, would popcorn digest? Wouldn't it be left over from the night before?
No, not in your stomach.
Yeah.
There's no way. It would have definitely passed. So what is the status of the case right now? I know there's a lot of news percolating about this.
Yeah, so the Innocence Project has picked up the case, but all legal appeals, all legal reasons for appeals are done. So it would have to be a new fact, a new piece of evidence. The Innocence Project often looks for DNA, something like that to come forward. But for Jeff, time is not on his side as this case gets colder.
Heather, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we reached out to Jeff Pelly's attorney. Here's what he said in part. It was proven that Jeff was allowed to go to the prom and that he rented his tux, and his stepmother bought his date's corsage for him that day. It all makes sense that he was actually happy and doing what he needed to do. This conviction, I'm continuing, this conviction was and remains a gross miscarriage of justice. So Jesse spent 30 years crawling through the darkness of this extreme tragedy of all this loss. What do you hope for? What, in your search for answers, what needs to happen?
I think, I'm on the right track of getting help, trying to deal with everything that happened, because it was the worst thing to deal with. I didn't know what to do most of my life, how to deal with it, and I just pushed it down, and now I'm actually getting the help I need. And, I'm hoping that other people will get help after they read the book and just realize that it's never too late.
The pain can be in all forms. Sometimes you can't see it. Thank you for being here. To hear more about Jesse's story, check out her book, I Am Jessica. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss out on new videos to live the good life.